Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the New Mexico Department of Workforce Solutions Employer Webinar Series. Today's topic is navigating the numbers using labor market data for workforce decisions. If you have questions, please submit them in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And this webinar is being recorded, so it will be available on the NMDWS YouTube channel, and I'll put the link into the chat for you. It's my pleasure now to introduce our speaker for today, Economic Research and Analysis Bureau Chief Rachel Moskowitz.
Thanks, Stacy. Welcome, everyone. My name is Rachel. I work in the Economic Research and Analysis Bureau of the Department of Workforce Solutions, and I'm an economist by trade. I've been an economist for over 30 years, so it's my pleasure to talk to you today about labor market data and the New Mexico economy. So here's the agenda. We're going to talk about labor market information, or what is LMI. We'll talk about the New Mexico economy. We'll briefly talk about the future of work and also about LMI resources you can use. And also we're going to do a little advertisement to help us help you. So what is LMI? Labor market information is any type of information specific to the labor market that helps people get jobs, helps people get better jobs, and helps businesses grow their company. The most popular piece of labor market information that we produce is the state of New Mexico unemployment rate. That's actually produced in-house in economic research and analysis. We have 10 other economists and who produce this information, and actually it'll be released tomorrow. And we produce it in conjunction with the federal U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. So labor market information is used by many people. It's used by researchers to assess the health of the economy, by policymakers and government to make sound policies and promote economic development, for job seekers to make informed career and employment decisions, and especially for businesses to help make informed business decisions in response to labor market demands and economic conditions. So some of the questions that we can help answer are, number one, my business is expanding and I need to hire an accountant. What is the average wage for accountants in Albuquerque? And these are actually questions that we have received. I want to open a gas station in Torrance County. Will I have competition from other gas stations? We got a question from an economic development organization down south, and they were looking for employment statistics for hospitality, oil and gas, and mining construction. And we got a question from a consulting firm up in Santa Fe, and they were looking for the top 10 employers based on the number of employees they have. And we have all this information, and we'll actually provide some of that at the end of this webinar. So we'll talk about the New Mexico economy. Now, caveat, a little disclaimer, is that all the opinions mentioned in this webinar are of my own and not necessarily that of the department. So again, like I mentioned, the unemployment rate is actually the most popular thing that we produce, and it comes out every month. It'll be produced tomorrow, and it's actually updated. So tomorrow we will be releasing the June unemployment rate figure, but we'll also be updating the May 2025 figure. So this bar chart, line graph, is the unemployment rate for New Mexico and the US. The red line is the unemployment rate for New Mexico. The blue line is the unemployment rate for US. The horizontal axis is the month, and the vertical axis is the actual unemployment rate. And this gray bar here is the recession. This is the COVID recession. And you'll see since January 2020, or especially during COVID, the U.S. unemployment rate really skyrocketed. It was almost 15%. But the New Mexico economy was not as high. It was slightly over 9%. You'll also notice that the U.S. economy actually peaked higher, peaked before the New Mexico rate, but it fell faster than the New Mexico rate. So New Mexico actually stayed in the COVID recession longer than the U.S. rate. And then more recently, it's leveled and it has been stable over the past couple of months. Now, looking farther back, I pulled the unemployment rate for both US and New Mexico going all the way back to January 1976. Again, the horizontal axis is the month, and the vertical axis is the unemployment rate. And these gray bars are the official recessions, and those are officially named by the National Bureau of Economic Research. They're a nonprofit think tank in Washington, D.C. So the red line is the New Mexico unemployment rate, and the blue line is the U.S. unemployment rate. And you'll notice a couple of interesting things is that typically, well, not unusual, is that the unemployment peaks toward the end of the recession. And what typically happens during economic downturns is that the people are laid off. The labor market is not directly initially impacted by economic downturns, but you see the unemployment rate really reflected toward the end of the recession. One other item that you do notice is our New Mexico unemployment rate has peaked in terms of during times when there wasn't an official recession, and that's due to our dependence on oil and gas. So during these times of higher unemployment rates are usually due to the decrease in the oil prices. So if there's a decrease in the oil prices, then typically the basin will lay people off because it's not profitable to keep workers drilling for oil when it's not profitable. So that's usually typically the reason why the New Mexico unemployment rate is high during times of non-recessionary periods. One other item that you do notice too is that during economic recessions, the U.S. rate, the New Mexico rate will increase, but not as much as the U.S. rate. And then the New Mexico rate actually stays higher longer than the US rate. So we don't rebound as quickly as the rest of the country. So our typical pattern when it comes to economic downturns is we don't show the initial impact as quickly as the rest of the country. However, we stay it's harder for us to recover. And you definitely see that in the since the 2000s. Was unemployment, and the unemployment rate is actually based off a survey. So the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, along with the Census Department, they actually survey about 900 to 1,000 households in New Mexico, and they ask people in the household, are you working, are you not working? And that is the unemployment rate. So that's one survey. Now, there's another survey that we do in conjunction with the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics that asks companies their employment levels. So on the unemployment rate is based on the household survey in which we actually ask people, are you working or you're not working? But the employment figures, which will also come out tomorrow, we ask companies, how many people do you employ and what are your wages? Now, some of you actually may have been in that survey, and I want to thank you for doing that because your data is very, very valuable to understanding the local labor market as well as the U.S. economy. So this is the employment growth rates for New Mexico and all other states in the country. So the horizontal axis is the month. The vertical axis is basically the percentage growth. What you really, it doesn't necessarily, it's not so important what the vertical axis is. The point is the graph. So this one is where all the states, their employment started in February 2020. So what I did was I took every state's employment figure for February 2020, and then I equaled it all to the same number. And then I showed the percentage change month over month. So I can see where does New Mexico stand in terms of the rest of the states. So the red line is New Mexico. And all these other gray lines are all the other 49 states plus the District of Columbia. And and this is beginning from starting with COVID. You'll see that our employment levels did not fall as far as other states did at the beginning of COVID, but it took us a little bit longer to recover from it. And it took us from February 2020, March 2020 to the middle of 2022. And we're here with the red line. So we're actually not doing that bad, especially once we came out of the recession, recovered over the 1.0 percent, 100% growth line. Now you have some other states here. This is Hawaii, this gray one here, and they've had a really hard time recovering from COVID because they were basically on lockdown. You have some other states. This is, I believe, West Virginia. Some of these other states include Texas, which actually other states that didn't shut down and actually have a more diversified economy. Now, this is the labor force participation rate. So we're back at the household survey. The labor force participation rate measures the percentage of the people in an area, whether New Mexico or the US, that are participating in the labor force. So basically, they're either working or they're unemployed, but they're looking for work. So they're actively in the labor force. The higher labor force participation rate is a measure of an economy's health. That means that people are participating in the labor force, they're in providing, paying taxes to support the base. They're not as likely to need services. So this is going back to 1976. Horizontal axis is the year, vertical axis is the percentage. The blue line is New Mexico's labor force participation rate, and the black line is the US average. A couple things to note is that number one, the New Mexico unemployment labor force participation rate has always been below the US. And that's been like that since 1976. Now, why has that been like that? Well, in 1976, I was only 6 years old. So I'm not quite sure, but thanks to the legislature, we have received some funding to identify why people are not in the not participating in the labor force. Thank you, legislature in the roundhouse. But another thing that's a little bit alarming is that the difference between the U.S. rate and New Mexico has actually widened over time. And you especially see that this is during the Great Recession. This is the 2007 to 2009. This is the major, basically almost, it could have been a Great Depression, but luckily government and the Federal Reserve stepped in quickly enough. You especially see the disparity between the two reflected then. And it's actually the difference has really widened. Here you see COVID, that's fallen. Now, during times of economic downturns, the labor force participation rate does fall. And that's because that people who are possibly close to retirement, if they get laid off, they might just take an early retirement. Some of the reasons that the labor force participation rate has been declining on the US as a whole is because the baby boom generation is retiring. The population is getting older. So the actual decline in labor force participation rate is actually normal, but the survey that we'll be conducting within the next year is mainly to do why the wide difference between the New Mexico rate and the US rate. All right, so let's talk about you. We're going to talk about businesses. In 2024, there were about 64,000 establishments in New Mexico. And this is broken out by employment size of the establishment. So there were about 63,875 establishments in New Mexico. So what I mean by establishments are it's a count of the actual shop. So for example, let's say I have a franchise and I have two locations. That's two different establishments as opposed to one company. So 41,766 of them had less than 5 workers. So 2 out of 3 establishments in the state had less than 5 workers, had fewer than 5 workers. And the total number of workers that they employed was 51,443, or 7.6% of total employment. What's interesting to note here is that most New Mexico establishments employ less than 5 workers, but medium-sized establishments employ the most people. So the size of establishment that employs the most people are those that are 20 to 49. There's only 4,500 of them, but they employ 20% of total employment in New Mexico. You'll see that there's only 15 establishments that are 1,000 or more, have 1,000 or more workers, and we probably all know them. And they employ 8.5% of total employment in the state. So this is especially important because it shows the importance of small businesses in New Mexico. That there's 2 or 3 of them are small, but they only employ 7.6% of all workers. And it's so important to not ignore and to pay attention to those middle-sized companies, especially those, to foster them and to grow them, especially small ones, to become a middle-sized company. Now, this is employment by firm age. This is for private industry only. This shows that 80% of employment in New Mexico, they worked for companies that have been in business for 11 years or more. So they employed businesses 11 years or more, employed 80% of all New Mexico workers. So you have businesses that are small in New Mexico and that have been here a long time, and they employ a lot of people. You have only 3% of uh, firms that were less than 1 year old. They employed about 19,000. Now, some of this information is going to be skewed because of COVID. That unfortunately wiped out a lot of smaller companies, and especially newer companies. So a lot of these are probably lower than normal, but it shows the importance of older and established companies in the state. So the next thing, we're still talking about you. We did an article in our labor market review, which I'll talk about in a minute, on the characteristics of business owners in New Mexico. Now, the most recent data we have is from 2021. I do know it's 3 or 4 years old, but it takes a while for data to come in, to be collected, to analyze and released. So, which is why data can be a little bit old. But we have the highest percentage of business owners that were Hispanic owned. We have 18.1% of all of our business were Hispanic owned. We had the 5th highest percentage of owners that were Native American, 6th highest that were veteran owned, and the 15th highest that were female owned, tied with Texas. Now, the industries with the most minority owned businesses were accommodation and food service. Hispanic owned were construction. Veteran owned were healthcare and social assistance, and female owned were professional, scientific, and technical services. Now, if you want more information on characteristics of business owners, you can find that information at this website here. You can click on this link when it's posted, or if you send me an email, I can provide that to you, or sign up for the labor market review, and we'll show you how to do that at the end. Yes, Amanda, we will share the slide deck afterwards. So one other item that we'll be talking about in our next labor market review, which will be published on July 25th, is gross domestic product. So gross domestic product is a measurement of everything that has been produced in the state. GDP is also produced for the US, it's produced by the state. Actually, GDP is available by county, and I believe it's also available by metropolitan statistical area. Metropolitan statistical area means basically like Albuquerque area, the 4 counties surrounding Albuquerque, San Juan County, Santa Fe, and Las Cruces County. So this left bar chart shows the year-over-year GDP change in real GDP. Real GDP means that it was adjusted for inflation. So we're comparing apples to apples when it says real GDP. The red bars are New Mexico GDP year-over-year percent change, and the blue bars are for the US. And you'll see that during 2020, our GDP went down by 2.7%, but we've nicely recovered in the years since then. Now, the share of real GDP by industry is shown in the pie chart. 22% of our GDP is from government and military. And that shows you, that's a little disconcerting because it doesn't reflect the diversified economy that really is a little bit more healthy, that one would want to see in a healthy economy. You also see that finance, insurance, and real estate is 15% of our GDP, and you have mining, oil and gas extraction. They make up 1/10 of our GDP. And reflecting back on the dependence on government, these are our industry, employment, and location quotients in New Mexico. So this first column is the industry name. This is the employment. So Combination Food Services had 71,400 employees, 71,473, and they had a location quotient of 1.15. The location quotient is basically a concentration number. And what that means is if it's a concentration of employment compared to the US. So what this means is that New Mexico in 2020 had a slightly higher concentration of employment in accommodation and food services than the rest of the country, because the US equals 1. Now, that could be due to 2 reasons. The first reason could be because we're less diversified than the rest of the country. And it could also be because we just have more people in accommodations and food services than the rest of the country. So it's 1 of 2 reasons. And without knowing more information, it's probably both, but I think it's mostly the non-diversification. But in 2024, there was 89,259 employment and accommodation food services. Here's our location quotient, and this is the difference. And what's really interesting about this is how high the location quotient is for mining. Mining includes oil and gas extraction. Yes, it includes the petroleum industry. Thank you. Oil and gas. It doesn't. Oil and gas extraction. It does include the petroleum industry, and that's probably most of it. Is the Permian Basin right here. So we have our employment is in 2024 was 7 times higher in mining, oil, and gas than it was for the rest of the country. Now, if you look at some states like, I don't know, like Delaware, they have 0. So that's 7 times the US average. That kind of makes sense. But also you'll see that some of these are very low, like management of companies. What that means is management is like headquarters. So we have very few companies that make New Mexico home, and that's the location quotient. And this is helpful because it gives you an idea of the diversity of the area, what type of other companies you'll find available in the state, and just the possible makeup of workers, as well as other types of supply chains that you may need. So other key labor market indicators that we talk about in our labor market review, which comes out every month, we have the number of establishments with gross job gains and gross job losses. This is for the third quarter 2024. So what this shows is that 1,261 establishments in the third quarter 2024 had employment losses, but 1,325 had employment gains. We have the number of online job postings That comes from our New Mexico Jobs online system, and it reflects the supply of workers. And actually, this can be drilled down by industry. So if you're interested in that, you can let me know. My email address is uh, on the very last PDF, but not today because I'm leaving right afterwards. And also, here we have the top employing industry for the fourth quarter 2024 by this comes out every quarter. So, for example, retail trade is the top employing industry for Quay, Torrance, Tobacco, Guadalupe, and Hidalgo County. One thing I do like to talk about is inflation, and not so much because it's interesting, but because people are always talking about it. This was never an issue uh, for 20, 30 years, but now it has become an issue. So I actually like to mention it because people want to know what it is. So inflation, there's numerous ways to measure inflation. The most common way to measure inflation is using the consumer price index. So the consumer price index is composed of a basket of goods, of 1,000 goods. And what the Bureau of Labor Statistics does is they measure each of those items every month. And the inflation rate is the percent change uh, over time. Typically, you want to use the percent change year over year. And actually, the Bureau of Labor Statistics released the CPI index just, I think it was like 2 days ago. Now, there's many different types of CPI. And the one that we're using is the all urban consumers, all items on US city average. And you can actually pull this graph off of the Fred. This is fred.stlouisfed.org. It's actually a great website. The one other inflationary rate that you may be interested in is the PPI. The PPI is the producer price index. The PPI is basically the inflation rate for producers, for companies. So it's the intermediary inflationary rate before it gets to consumers. And the reason that that's really interesting is because you actually see the inflation rate, you see what happens with the inflation rate to the PPI first before it gets to the consumer. Now, the red line is the CPI for consumers, and the green line is the PPI for producers. And if you look at the red line only for now, you'll see that the CPI has pretty much been stable since the 80s. It's a little hard. I should have made the green line a little thinner. But I don't know if anyone was alive in the 70s and had a mortgage, but you'll know that you paid an astronomical amount for that mortgage rate. Now, I think that, and that was in the 80s right here. And if you look at the red line, the inflationary rate has actually been very, very small or low for a numerous number of generations. And when COVID hit, it increased the inflationary rate. Now, this is the average to about a little less than 10%. Now, that was extremely hurtful to consumers. But someone who actually lived through the 70s or the early 80s and actually remember this inflationary time. It actually was not that bad, but the issue was it really hit food and housing and gasoline, something that everyone buys. And the PPI, which is the producer price index, you'll see that it's actually a lot more volatile. And what's interesting to know is that the PPI is not necessarily reflected by the time it gets to the consumer. You do see this deflationary time period. This was during the Great Recession. That's due to the decrease in housing prices. So the CPI right now, it came out, I believe it was yesterday, 2 days ago, 2.7%. The Federal Reserve likes to keep it within 2%. So we'll see what happens when the Federal Reserve meets next time, what happens. See what goes on with the interest rates. All right, so let's talk about the future of work. So these are some of the factors that impact the future of work. Now, what's somewhat measurable are demographics. We can relatively predict what's going to happen with the demographics. Technology, that's something that we can somewhat identify and determine, and laws and regulations. And what I mean by some laws and regulations is like during Prohibition. So the during Prohibition, the demand for bartenders fell incredibly for obvious reasons because they couldn't serve alcohol, which is basically that's their job. Also, TSA agents, the demand for TSA agents after 9/11 that actually increased. That's rather predictable. Now, what's really hard to predict are the change in consumer tastes because we don't really necessarily know how people are going to react. When's the next Beanie Baby craze? The supply of goods, that's completely out of our control, especially if many of our supplies come from out of our country or out of our state, and how we work. And what I mean by how we work is basically how we're doing this presentation right now. We're doing it via Zoom. 10 years ago, I don't think there was a Zoom. Uh, Kids are going to school on Zoom now, and that was not how I went to school. I couldn't even imagine going to school via Zoom. So uh, if you can predict that, then you should be at the horse races. So this is something that I like to show, and it shows the impact of new technology on the labor market. So on the left side are professionals and managers, and the right side is agricultural workers. And these are the uh, percent of U.S. workers in that time period that worked in these occupations. So in 1850, you had 50% of the population, 1 out of 2 Americans working in agriculture, and now it's 2%. And that's due to technology. And professionals and managers back in 1850 were about 7.5%, and now well, according to this, it's close to 40%. It's probably may even be more, and that's basically how we work. And um, and you'll also see this type of trend if you were to look up this or typing pools. You don't see that anymore. So all of these factors of technology and laws and regulations, demographics, consumer taste, supply goods, and how we work have all changed uh, the field of working. So I got this information from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. These are occupations that are considered highly susceptible to automation. One of them is fast food and counter workers, and you especially see that because there's not a lot of people that have high turnover. So the impact that could reduce the demand for these type of workers are robotic food prep machines. But trends that could increase the demand for fast food and counter workers are also increased population and fewer people eating at home. So you have this push and pull of demand, and which is going to overrun each other. I think the robotic food prep workers may win, especially in areas that have a lot of can't find workers, so they're probably going to go to AI. Other occupations that are considerably highly susceptible to automation is heavy and tractor trailer truck drivers because of self-driving vehicles, industrial truck and tractor operators due to mobile robotic tech. I don't know about this truck drivers because I mean people can't even drive their own cars themselves, so I don't know how they're going to do in front of the self-drive. Maybe they'll do better. I don't know. Interpreters and translators. Now you have you can go to Italy and you don't need to learn language. You can just put it on your phone. That's going to could reduce demand. Janitors and cleaners, robot vacuum cleaners, uh, hand freight, stock material workers can be replaced by robots. I thought this was hilarious. Robotic lawn mowers, landscaping. I don't know if anyone has one of those. Well, actually, how many people have lawnmowers here in New Mexico? I don't. So maybe that won't impact New Mexico as much. Personal financial auditor advisors can be replaced by algorithms. I don't know, surgeons, robotics. I don't know. These aren't my ideas. But I thought that was really interesting because we all don't know how it's going to be impacting, AI is going to impact these occupations. Oh, we don't know how it's going to play out in the long run, but this new technology will need people to design, build, install, and maintain it. And it's going to impact everyone. So, at one time, a manager didn't do their own typing, didn't do their own copying. If you see the old movies, we had these huge typing pools. We don't have that anymore. So I think we're all going to be impacted by AI. We just don't know by how much. We can These are forecasts from the Congressional Budget Office on the percentage change in the population. The red line is New Mexico, the blue line is US, and we're about here. And this is the 0% line. So our population is aging and it's declining. So that is something that as of right now, that's what we project. We forecast that. So we are going to need machines possibly to replace some of the workers that we need or technology. And here is this is from the UNM Geospatial and Population Studies. Thank you, UNM, for providing this information for free. It's on their website. So this shows that our population is going to be aging. So in 2020, 1 out of 4 people in the state were between 0 and 19 years of age, but that's gone down to 19.1%. Whereas you'll see that the big bulk is those between 40 and 64 and 65 plus. So we're going to look more like Japan looks now. Maybe not that drastic, but a lot more older people and a lot less younger people. And older people need more support. They need more services than younger people. Older people, if they retire, do not contribute to the work, do not contribute to the labor force. So they're not in the labor force. So that's definitely something that's of concern. That's something that needs to, well, people are aware of it, and it's happening throughout the country. It's not just New Mexico. Now, every year or two, we do employment projections. Our employment projections, our most recent are to the year 2032. And these employment projections are based off of no change to the economy, basically no harm, it measures demand only, and it doesn't take into account any huge economic shock to the system. So what we're projecting is that the biggest increase is going to be in healthcare and social assistance. And that's because we're all getting older. And we're actually going to be updating this information in the next couple months, and we'll be releasing our 2033 projections. But we also produce this by occupation, and that's available on our website. Okay, here's some LMI resource you can use. We have publications. This is our labor market review. It's published every month. Our next one's going to come out next Friday. And that has information on employment, unemployment, a lot of the special articles that we do. When we talked about GDP and characteristics of business owners, they're in this publication. We have something for veterans. We have New Mexico State of the Workforce, where we look at a high level, the state of the New Mexico workforce compared to the US. And then we have our employment projections. Our most recent is our 2022 to 2032, but our 2033 figures will be coming out shortly. All right, so our stuff is on our DWS homepage. You go to this website, dws.state.nm.us. Under researchers is all of our information. We have data dashboards, in which case you can customize the data that you need, and that information is here. We have employment, unemployment, employment by industry, occupations and wages, our projections, and our occupational outlook. We actually have something on this consumer price index, but we're actually going to make that into an easier to understand and use dashboard that will be coming out within the next 6 months or so. Our publications are here. This is our economic news release. That's the one that'll be released tomorrow. Our labor market review, which I highly recommend that you subscribe to. We have reports and special analysis. We have career employment resources and our veteran specific resources. If you want to sign up to be added to the LMI publication email notification listing, go to this website and enter in your name, email address, and some other information, just basic information. And this is incorrect. This is 2025 publication schedule. But I did this 3 years ago, and I thought it was still a good slide. All right, now if you forget this part, these are the actual links to the directly to the websites that are mentioned here. So we have many different avenues or ways of getting to the data that you need. But I actually like this slide. I like the colors, and I did this a long time ago. It just makes me happy. All right, so please help us help you. We send out surveys. Please answer them. One of them is the Occupational Employment and Wage Statistics Survey, in which we ask you what occupations do you hire and what are your wages. And what we do is we combine that information and we produce information such as this: the median wages and wages by occupation. The data that you provide us in our Occupational Employment and OEWS survey is used by kids, it's used by employers to determine what career path they need to go, what occupation can they get into to help them live a lifestyle that can support them, that can help them create a family and live here in New Mexico. We have another survey. This is the Current Employment Statistics Survey. This is the establishment survey that has the employment figures. All of these surveys are conducted throughout the country. If you're not sure if they're legit, please give us a call or send me an email. They are legitimate. We do not release the information. In fact, we're so secretive about this data that we actually sit behind locked doors because we are not allowed to release this information to anybody, not even to like our UI people, and nobody. You have to have a special badge to get in. I mean, we're talking high security. Okay, so our CES figures are used, our OEWS figures are used for median wage, and it's also to identify or help determine how much to pay that accountant that you need if you expand your business. So if you go to one of our dashboards, our OEWS Occupational Employment and Wage Statistics Table dashboard, and you punch in Albuquerque and identify whether you want annual or hourly wage, out will come a list of all the occupations, and then the average wage in Albuquerque for accountants and auditors is $85,000. So one thing you may want to ask yourself is, are your wages competitive? In fact, I have an employer down south. He contacts me every other year. He sends me a list of his occupations and he says, can you please provide me the average wage in our area? Because I want to make sure that I am paying my employees a competitive wage, because he doesn't want to lose them. So you know who you are. I don't know if you're on this webinar, but I appreciate you for doing that. And I do that all the time. Great customer. And that is all I have. Here is my phone number. I prefer email. I don't like answering the phone. I'm Gen X. So could you share that link on the chat, please? Submit, can you share that link? Which link? My email? Oh, in the chat? I don't know. Can you share? Anyway, I'm going to open it up for questions. Can you do that? Or you want me to do it?
No, I can do that.
The wages.
So, for the wages.
Yeah, okay. Let's see here.
This is the OES page.
Yeah, let me just get out of it here. Actually, I could demo it if you want, if we don't have any questions.
Yeah, we don't have any questions.
Okay. Actually, we're going to demo it. Thank you, Ruth.
Oh,
Do we have another question? I'm going to demo it.
great.
But yeah, there you go. All right, once I get it up, I'll share my screen. Okay, so Stacy, can you see my screen?
Yes, can see it.
Okay, awesome. All right, so if you click under researchers and you go to, these are our dashboards, go to occupations and wages. You scroll down, and there's 4 boxes here. And you can actually go and compare all these, but unfortunately, I don't really have a whole lot of time, but select your geography. And let's say my dude down south, he's in the southwestern region. And let's say we want annual. And I don't bother with these because it comes out with everything. So let's see, so for example, he does medical, he's in medical equipment. So I'll just pull something. Uh, let's see here. Registered nurses, that's a perfect one. Registered nurses, uh, if you, they employ 2,300, and this is their entry average and experience wage. Now these are workforce regions. If they don't mean anything to you, that's fine. You can, if you're in one of these cities, you can pull Las Cruces, Santa Fe. If you don't understand these regions, if you go under definitions, it'll tell you what the regions are and what counties those include, but they're by workforce region. Now, these asterisks mean that it's suppressed and we can't release that information. And that's how diligent we are in terms of protecting privacy, because even if, let's say, there's one company or one establishment that hires cardiologists, we can't release that information. So that's the information. If you want to download it, you can actually click on this button right here to download it. And then you can click on, if you want to download it in PDF, this cross tab is another fancy word for Excel. You can download it. So my favorite thing is LMR, and since I'm running the webinar, well, Stacy is, I'm gonna talk about that. And I won't keep you, I won't keep you too long, but I just want to talk about what's in this thing. I think it's really cool, and we spent a lot of time on it. So first of all, I want to thank Stacy and her team for working on it. I'm on my laptop here, so I'll make it a little smaller. We got a nice picture of New Mexico. I appreciate that, Stacy. We've got employment, unemployment, and here we talk about the unemployment rate and by number, by demographics, and some other really cool stuff. Here's unemployment rate by county. And here we have employment by industry. And then we have some words and some really pretty graphs. I actually like this one. This is major employment development. So we subscribe to a newspaper clipping service, and they provide us with clippings of newspapers out the state, and we have some information on companies that are hiring and laying off. We have this New Mexico County profile. So every month we have a profile of 3 counties. This last month was Hidalgo, Lee, and Luna. And we have their unemployment rate, employment, per capita personal income, educational attainment, just some stuff that is interesting. I don't know. Maybe only economists would say stuff like that. Oh, and then we have a special article. Last month, we talked about the number of jobs supported by New Mexico exports. And in 2022, which is the most recent data available, was about 14,000. And here we talk about exports. Most of them, more than half, went to Mexico, and we have it by commodity value. So the top one was computer equipment. And we have a picture of cows. which is really cute. And I thought this was interesting. Oh, these are value, but oh, this is the one I like. Sanitary support. Look at that. They're just booming. This is like 16 billion. I mean, look at that. That's crazy, huh? You go sanitary support. This is for quarterly. This is employment by county. If you are county focused or you work with counties, you want to, that's interesting. We've got information on industry and we've got key labor market indicators. And the labor market review we're going to be releasing next Friday is going to include an article on GDP, uh, an update of our Why I Work website, which I'm not going to show you now, and also a profile on the youth in New Mexico. So, yeah.
Rachel, one question is there specific information for small businesses? Is there something they could use within Laser or another data tool that they could use?
Okay, so I don't have anything readily available on small businesses. Uh, if you want that information, send me an email and I'll have to personalize that request. I've been asked about that before. And actually, this is really interesting. One of the hardest things is the definition of a small business because some people think it depends on which definition. So if you tell me what you need, I have to dig through the data. That's a little harder. So some of the requests that we get are really pretty much straightforward, and that's something that we can prepare. We prepare on a regular basis. But something specific like that small business, that one's pretty a little harder. So send me an email. I'll help you out as much as I can. So I don't. I see your question, Tate Gregory. I can't speculate on that. Uh, I can tell you, actually, I won't speculate on that. I don't feel comfortable doing that. I do know that it will impact New Mexico. I do know that basic economic theory shows uh, that trade among countries, for the most part, benefits everyone, most people. That tariffs are a hindrance to that trade and could make it more expensive consumers. So I can tell you that tariffs do increase the cost of goods. It decreases the variety of goods available to consumers, and it may not be in the best interest to produce them. However, I don't know what the impact will be. Oh, okay, thank you. So yeah, we have yeah, sorry, Tate. So Janine, we actually have an article on the unemployment rate in New Mexico tribal locations. And that came out, when did that come out? That came out in April. Uh, so if you want that, just let me know, or I can really demo it super quick. Um, yeah, we do it once a year. The employment and unemployment rate of tribal areas, and it's horrible. I mean, the unemployment rate is just absurd. But we like to have that produce that every year.
Rachel, you might have already mentioned it, but just to reiterate, what are some labor market signals employers should be paying attention to if they want to stay competitive?
Okay, so thank you for that question. So for most companies, the highest, the most expensive item that you pay for is your people. So you definitely need to make sure your wages are competitive. So if you're losing people, you need to ask yourself, why is that? Is it you're not paying them enough? Is it the work? Is it the type of work that you're doing? I think that you need to be aware of what's going on with other types of companies. Maybe do I don't want to say join clubs, but become familiar in the in the industry among fellow company owners on what's trending in the industry. I think inflation you need to keep an eye on. I think quality, overall quality. I think you need to keep an eye on the consumer. Uh, I don't know if that helps.
Yeah. I also
Okay.
put in the chat a link straight to the labor market review. So
Okay.
for those specific articles, I just wanted to mention that they are pulled out at the bottom of that page. So you can go to that page and just look at the special articles as well.
Yeah. I do have a caveat. I've never been a business owner. I've been an economist for almost my whole life, so I can tell you what I think, but I do know that I do want to tell you that if you have if you have a data need, uh, let us know. And we're really good at looking at the overall economy and what we recommend and what could happen. I'm not a microeconomist, and that's in terms of particular specific businesses and industries. I don't look at that as closely as the overall economy. So that's my excuse.
Well, thank you, Rachel, and thank you everyone for attending today. This will be recorded. It has been recorded and it will be on the NMDWS YouTube channel. You'll be receiving an email tomorrow with a direct link to this webinar that will be posted there. So thank you so much for your attendance.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it, Stacy. Thanks for including me. Bye. Have a great day.